The Sega Saturn, perhaps one of Sega's most infamous consoles. Despite releasing at the front end of the 3D gaming craze, the Saturn did not sell well compared to the likes of Sony's PlayStation and Nintendo's Nintendo 64. This could mostly be attributed to its poor marketing in the West, in combination with its late release there, as the console performed admirably among the Japanese market, releasing only a few months before the PlayStation. Because of its poor fiscal performance, most people attribute the Saturn to the beginning of the end for Sega's stranglehold over the video game market they had acquired during the 16-bit era. In spite of this, the Saturn still has its fair share of fans that grew up with it, and these fans hold the console in high regard. This is mostly due to the console's superb lineup of games like Burning Rangers, Virtua Fighter, Panzer Dragoon, and of course, the topic of today's video, Nights into Dreams. NiGHTS has received a bit of a resurgence as of late with the release of its thematic spiritual successor, Balan Wonderworld. Oh, we'll get to you later. And Sega themselves offering NiGHTS up for free on Steam for their 60th anniversary. Not to mention, this year marks the 25th anniversary of the NiGHTS franchise. Now, more than ever, NiGHTS is on the mind of gamers, and I figured there's no better time to finally give this game a proper dissection to see if it still holds up today. Disclaimer before we begin. I will be reviewing the remade HD version of the game primarily, with some references to the Sega Saturn original when need be. I'm doing this because the HD version is currently the most accessible and, despite its removal of some features, is what I would consider the definitive version of the game. Now, that statement might be a little controversial to you Saturn users, but I'll be sure to address that later. Without further delay, let's take a dive into the world of NiGHTopia. Ideas for Nights into Dreams began during the development of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. The game's producer, Yuji Naka, got the inspiration for making a game centered around flying from his multiple flights to and from America while developing Sonic 2. Naka then pitched the ideas for a flying game to his co-developer, Naoto Oshima, who became very enthused by the idea as he felt it was a good way to break away from Sonic for a bit. Despite his enthusiasm, official development of Nights would not begin until after the release of Sonic and Knuckles. Even before this, though, Oshima had already gone through some early designs for the Nights aesthetic. Originally, the main character was designed as a bird, but due to its similarity with Sonic as an animal protagonist, this design was quickly scrapped and replaced with a more humanoid one. For the setting, it was quickly decided upon that the game would take place in a world of dreams. The game's lead designer, Takashi Iizuka, began researching dream psychology to try and make the dream world as authentic as possible, with the characters drawing parallels to real-life dream analysis from Carl Jung. They wanted to engross the player in a dream world and make it feel like something they could visit in their own dreams. In fact, he got so deep into his dream research that Iizuka would regularly be asked to interpret dreams from his coworkers. Nights' design went through quite a bit of changes during development. Originally, the character had a much simpler design and had much more exaggerated facial features. There were many bumps of trial and error, but eventually Oshima settled on the design that we know today. To complement the new 3D art direction, Norihiro Nishiyama decided to animate the cutscenes in 3D CG rather than in a 2D anime one. The team was a bit apprehensive of this stylistic choice, fearing that audiences would be less receptive of the CG cutscene. Nishiyama's reason for this proposed style was to reduce dissonance between cutscenes and gameplay. Nishiyama wanted the transition between the two to be as seamless as possible. This reasoning successfully swayed the team, and they allowed him to go forward and create the cutscenes in CG. With the world and aesthetics set in stone, the team began developing the technical side of the game. But this is where issues really started to arise. The team struggled with the idea of making a game in 3D, as not only have they never designed a game in 3D, but they also felt they wouldn't be able to inject as much personality into 3D models as they would with 2D sprites. Eventually, the team would design the game in 3D to make use of the Saturn's new hardware. But since 3D game design as a whole was in its infancy, the team had no reference for how to design levels around the third dimension. The first level of the game, Spring Valley, was scrapped and remade multiple times during development. After so much headache, Naka decided to scrap full 3D when flying, as they found it too difficult to control. Instead, the game's flying sections would take place in a 2.5D environment, while full 3D control would be restricted to only when you're playing as the kids. 2.5D still proved to be quite a challenge for the developers, but after the switch in design, things went a bit more smoothly as the game began to take shape. There was just one more challenge the developers had to overcome: controls. Using a traditional D-pad to control Nights felt unwieldy and did not give the level of precision needed, even with it only being a 2.5D game. Though control problems are not unique within game development, the NiGHTS team did offer a unique solution. In response to the imprecise D-pad, the developers created a brand new controller they dubbed the 3D controller. The 3D controller makes use of the circular control stick, which allows more range of motion when controlling a character. The control stick is a commonplace addition nowadays, but back then, this was a huge breakthrough in controller design. The new controller was more than a novelty to the developers, as they felt it was integral to the NiGHTS experience. As a result, every copy of the game would be bundled with this new controller. With all the pieces in place and hurdles overcome, NiGHTS Into Dreams finally released for the Sega Saturn on July 5th, 1996. But what exactly did the final product entail? Well, let's set the stage with the story. Our story begins in the city of Twin Seeds. Here we find a boy named Elliot playing basketball with his friends from school. We see Elliot's talent for the sport and can infer he has quite the passion for it. Not too long into his game, Elliot is robbed of the ball by some older boys, who proceed to one-up him by charging forward and slam dunking the ball. In this moment, Elliot freezes, and the boys proceed to laugh and taunt him. They even aggressively throw the ball back to Elliot, who is too distraught to even catch it. Elliot, alone and defeated, returns home with anger and anxiety filling his mind. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a girl named Clarice is practicing her singing as she prepares for an audition in the annual Twin Seeds Festival. She shows confidence as she sings by herself, but when the time comes to perform on stage in front of the judges, Clarice begins to panic. She tries to center herself by clenching her fists, but unfortunately loses focus and runs off stage in fear. That night, Elliot and Clarice return home, thinking of themselves as failures, not realizing that the real challenge is about to begin. In the world of NiGHTopia, where our dreams are played out, an evil being is gaining tremendous power. His name is Wiseman the Wicked, and through his creation, the Nightmaren, he captures precious dream energy from humans. If not foiled, he will rise from the subconscious and enter our world, and no power on Earth will be able to stop him. As Wiseman starts fulfilling his horrible plan, he sends his minions to the minds of Clarice and Elliot. Taking advantage of their weakened psyche, the Nightmare manifests as their fears, and the failures from the day prior begin to play out in their heads. The kids, overwhelmed with fear, flee as the Nightmare give chase. As they run down a hallway of shattered memories, a bright light appears in front of them. The kids run to the light with open arms and are transported to the world of NiGHTopia. Once they arrive in NiGHTopia, the Nightmaren catch up with them and rob them of 4 mysterious orbs floating around them. Just as the 4 orbs leave their body, a new red orb is formed in their place. The children rise and notice a humanoid figure dancing in a gazebo-like monument. The children approach the monument, and the creature inside gleefully approaches them, though it is stopped by a barrier around the monument. The creature then explains to them where they are, and Wiseman's plans to enter the waking world. The creature tells them the orbs that were stolen from them are called Idiot, and they are an energy formed from the minds of human, with each color representing a different trait, and that Wiseman needs that power to enter the waking world. The creature then notices the red idiot circling around the kids, and explains to them that the energy from that orb is very powerful, and not only will allow the creature to break free from their prison, but is also the one power that Wiseman cannot possess. The creature then strikes a deal with the children. If they use their power to help them escape their prison, they will in turn help them reclaim their stolen Idia from the Nightmaren. Just a few moments ago, the children felt like total failures, but now that the world needs their help, Clarice and Elliot feel for the first time in their lives a courage growing within them and accept the creature's proposition. The creature warns that sooner or later, Wiseman will send the most powerful of his Nightmaren after Clarice and Elliot, and that they must be ready for a fight. Using their red Idia, the children merge their bodies with the creature, who then properly introduces themselves as Knights. Together, the kids and NiGHTS take to the skies as they set out to reclaim their stolen Idia and restore peace to NiGHTopia. Their journey takes them to many strange worlds formed from their subconscious. Wiseman quickly dispatches his most powerful Nightmare to intercept them, but each one of them falls thanks to the power of NiGHTS and the red Idia. Even NiGHTS' sibling Riala is no match for their combined strength. Reaching the climax of their journey, they enter a world that takes the form of their home city, Twin Seeds. Here, Wiseman himself intervenes, blasting the kids away from NiGHTS as they make their way towards the Idia Palace. The kids then land on a small floating platform with no signs of solid ground nearby. With no options left, the kids confide in their courage and jump off the platform and dive into the foggy abyss. Right as they breach the fog, the power of the red idiot swells within them and gives the two kids the ability to fly. The children proceed to reclaim their stolen idiot all by themselves as they approach the peak of Twin Seeds Tower. As they make their way to NiGHTS, a barrier blocks the peak of the tower. Depending on which child you play as, they will attempt to break the barrier, but to no avail. Soon after, they are joined by the other child as they meet for the first time. Using both their powers, they break the barrier trapping NiGHTS, and use the power of their combined idiot to travel directly to the world of Nightmare and confront Wiseman himself. Once they arrive at Nightmare, the kids each bond with NiGHTS, causing two NiGHTS to appear at once. Wiseman then ambushes the children and NiGHTS. He uses his godlike abilities to summon the power of the elements to attack them, but thanks to NiGHTS' acrobatic skills and the kid's powerful idiot, the Lord of Nightmares is swiftly defeated. As Wiseman begins to fade away, so too does the world of Nightmare. Before the world can fully collapse, NiGHTS transports the children back to NiGHTopia. NiGHTS unfortunately stays behind, leaving their fate a mystery. As they return to NiGHTopia, Claris is knocked unconscious, but Elliot still remains lucid. Elliot then proceeds to pick up the unconscious Claris and place her under a tree just before he starts to fade away and return to the waking world. Claris awakens right as Elliot departs and tries to reach out to him, but is unfortunately too late. She then observes the land around her, when suddenly some friendly NiGHTopians emerge from the grass, looking as playful as ever. Claris uses her last moments in NiGHTopia to sing to the NiGHTopians before eventually waking up back home. Claris wakes up feeling a new sense of confidence and heads back to Twin Seeds Tower to try her audition again. As she is about to perform, anxiety once again fills her mind, but thanks to her journey with NiGHTS, she successfully calms her mind and walks out on stage. She then proceeds to blow away the judges with her incredible performance, which lands her the lead singing spot in the Twin Seeds Festival. At around the same time, Elliot returns to the basketball court with his friends to try and stand up to the older boys. Elliot, using his newfound courage, is able to dunk on the older boys and earn their respect. A few days later, Elliot parts ways with his friends after another basketball game, as the Twin Seed Festival is just beginning. As Elliot walks towards the festivities, he spots a sign on one of the nearby buildings which reads Twin Dreams. Reminding him of NiGHTS, Elliot enters the building, curious of what it may entail. Upon stepping inside, he sees Claris center stage performing for the festival. Excited to see the same girl from his dreams, he runs down the theater. Claris quickly catches sight of Elliot and shows a similar expression of joy. As Claris's song winds down, both of their minds are brought back to NiGHTopia. Despite their time in NiGHTopia being over, they will never forget the journey that they experienced with NiGHTS. So that's the story of NiGHTS into Dreams. It's a pretty simple story that effectively shows the journey of two kids overcoming their fears and anxieties, a topic which wasn't really covered in media at the time, let alone video games. This has caused a lot of people to latch onto the game's story more as time goes on, and the developers did a wonderful job in their execution. The cutscenes of the game, despite showing their age, still effectively communicate all the emotions of the characters without even a single line of dialogue. DJ Valentine has a great video which covers the real-life implication of NiGHTS' story, which I will have linked in the description if you want to dive a bit deeper. The only real problem with the story is it coming to a halt once the gameplay begins. Luckily, it's not a huge issue, as the story details for these segments are given in the manual if you play the Saturn version, or in the options menu if you play the HD version. Not to mention, presenting stories like this was a standard for the time, so I can't knock the game too hard for it. Overall though, the story is quite charming, and is something I think everyone can enjoy or even relate to nowadays. With the story covered, we can finally get on to the main course of this video, the gameplay.